Alright, hello, welcome. My name is Shaina. I'm an astrologer, and today we are continuing this little mini Pluto series that I'm doing. I already did a video all about, what is Pluto in astrology, what is Pluto in Aquarius, my predictions, how to calculate your fortune with Pluto in Aquarius, just basically all of your questions, what Pluto in Aquarius actually means if you're a Placidus tropical astrologer. But now I'm going to answer what it means specifically for you. And Pluto in Aquarius is a huge transit. Okay, it takes 20 years. So today in part 2 of this little mini Pluto series, I'll be talking about Pluto transiting the 12 houses, how that affects you, all this sort of stuff. Okay, so before we get into this video any further, let me just do some quick little advertising. So I sell birth chart readings on my website, shainaemily.com. I have an astrology TikTok, and I have a personal Instagram. So I already discussed this in a lot more length in my previous video, but I just think it's so important that I want to talk about this here as well. This is just such an important point. I want to stress it both times. So I am a tropical Western astrologer that uses the Placidus system. Okay, so I use interceptions. My houses are irregular degrees. I kind of just say that how things land are honestly how things land, and everything reflects patterns. And if it seems odd, then it's probably odd for a reason, right? This is Pluto transits through the houses. And the reason for that is because, first of all, I don't follow whole sign astrology. And also I wouldn't count your sun sign, although you can take the sun sign and you can see oh, it's going to at some point square or sextile this and that, but it's just such a small piece of the puzzle. And I think the biggest slice of the pie to kind of, if you're gonna make a video and just want to see, oh, what's my Pluto predictions or what's going on here, it would be looking through the house, looking at the transit and the house that Pluto is currently going through. So if you're wondering how do I calculate this, well, first of all, pull up your Placidus horoscope, of course, and I showed you how to do this in the previous video, and it's all segmented and all that sort of stuff. If you want a more in-depth thing, this is just a quick little reminder. Okay, you do not have to be an advanced astrologer to find your Pluto and Aquarius fortune. All you need to do is match up where Aquarius falls in your houses, your position of houses, and then you're all set to go. Very simple, okay? Let's use Danny DeVito's chart. So in his chart, you'll see that house 2 starts at 3 degrees, 40 minutes Aquarius. So he will be experiencing most of the Pluto transit in his second house. And you'll see that his second house does not end until 14 degrees, 32 minutes of Pisces. So that means that he will be experiencing from 3 degrees of Aquarius about until 30 degrees of Aquarius in his second house. However, he still has a little bit more time to go through his Pluto transit in his first house. This is really easy to look at if you see a circular chart and you know what the glyph of Aquarius looks like. Here's the glyph of Aquarius. Find that on your chart. Do you see that little arrow? Do you see how that little arrow is pointing to the glyph of Aquarius, and you see how there's a little number 2? Well, then you'll see that most of Aquarius is encompassed in a second house. Now, if Danny DeVito were to just go on, my horoscope for all the signs, he would be looking at Scorpio, and this would have nothing to do with his second house. Not that it's wrong, it's just what I wouldn't consider would be the most impactful to spend kind of discussing in a kind of video, or just in general what I would pay attention to in myself. Also, it's super important because even if he was to look up the horoscope for Sagittarius rising, I love the idea that Danny DeVito's doing this, by the way. If he were to look up Sagittarius rising horoscope for Pluto and Aquarius, they would be talking about his third house, because most Sagittarius risings have Aquarius encompassing their third house. But because I use Placidus and because he has an interception, the way his works is that Aquarius is in a second house. So that's why it's so important to kind of customize this for you. I have one last disclaimer, but this is an important one, okay? All Pluto transits are scary, okay? That's just the nature of Pluto transits. If you are watching this video and you hear the themes I'm talking about and you're like, oh, this is nerve-wracking, I'm doomed, oh my gosh, I have it so, horrible, or whatever it might be, or you're, cancering your situation and going boohoo, every Pluto transit is hard. And even so, there can be some transits that, maybe Pluto in the third house, you'd think that's not that rough of a transit, but you have a bunch of energy in the third house, and you have a bunch of energy that squares that, and it's a huge deal in your life, and it actually becomes a big theme. And it's like, what? I thought my Pluto in the second house would be a much bigger deal, and my Pluto in the first house, but it's not. My Pluto in the third house, right? So it's very individualized, and I don't want to label all Pluto transits as scary either. That's not what I'm trying to do, but they do sound, you know what it is? Intimidating. They all sound very intimidating. So don't feel like if you skip ahead to yours and it sounds a little bit, oh my God, right? They're all meant to be that way. That's Pluto. It's meant to shake things up. Also, especially because it's in Aquarius, Pluto's not super comfortable in Aquarius as it squares the planet that Pluto rules, which is Scorpio. So this is just an uncomfortable period for most of us, honestly, as is almost all Pluto transits right now. I'm just kidding. Okay, so enough chit chat. Let's get into it. All right, hello, welcome. I'm assuming you skipped ahead, right? Hello, welcome. Okay, so this is Pluto transiting your first house. So before I talk about first house, I want to talk about the 12th house because this is what you just came from or what you might be experiencing for a little bit longer. So it's important to talk about. So if you are going into your first house Pluto, you just went through a time where you have really been in like spiritual hiding, spiritual isolation, spiritual almost like segregation. Right? It can also feel like there's been a lot of power exerted onto you, but you have not gotten to act out your power. You have not gotten to make decisions for yourself. You have had to let everybody else make decisions for you. Take your power for you, basically. This can be a very passive time, right? You might not be a very passive person, but it might have felt like you were forced to play a passive role during this 12th house time. This was also a very introspective time, right? You might have not seen a lot of external changes, but there might have been a lot of internal psychological changes or things that you went through really alone and by yourself. Now, going into Pluto in the first house, this could not be more of a different story. And yeah, I'm getting loud because Pluto in the first house is loud, okay? Pluto in the first house is like, hey, I have been stepped on. I have been taken advantage of. I have had my morals compromised even. I have gone through it. I have gone to the end of the rabbit hole and I came out of it alive. And so I am here, okay? Nobody's going, that's Pluto in the first house, right? That's what you're going to start feeling the ruminations of. Now, I should also say, you don't turn around and just wake up and are like, I used to not have confidence when Pluto went through my 12th house and all of a sudden I woke up and I fucking have a bunch of confidence with Pluto in the first house. No, that's not how it goes, right? This stuff is slow. This stuff takes time to build, especially Pluto. Pluto takes a lot of time to affect us. It's so far out, right? It takes a lot of time to affect us. So Pluto in the first house, you will just start feeling these ruminations of, I have to make my own decisions. What that encompasses, I think, is the biggest thing. And most people that will be going through this will be Aquarius risings, of course. You know, you've been going through having Pluto in your 12th house. It's probably been very, very frustrating to you, okay? If you have Aquarius in your first house. Aquarius, just as it is, wants to say it like it is, stand up for themselves, stand up for their opinions, be the odd one out and not care about it, right? But it might have not been able to feel like you were able to do that. Like you were kind of out of place and in the complete wrong way. Now with Pluto and Aquarius, you might be feeling like you're getting your jive back a little bit. I mean, again, this is if it's well aspected, but I think no matter what, you're going to feel like you're coming out of your shell. You're going to feel like, oh my gosh, like I, again, I had to let the world make my decisions for me. And now I'm being asked to make my own decisions. And that can be sometimes more intimidating than you think. Like, oh my God, this is what I always wanted, but now what will I do with this? You know, you will kind of have to take charge and lead your life a little bit more. Obviously, there's, you know, some general themes with Pluto in the first house also is, you know, you're probably going to change the way you look. Maybe you'll look darker. Maybe, you know, people are going to be more suspicious of you. People are going to look at you a lot more with a side eye. Even if you don't dress like that, people are just going to target you more. Or you're going to have to look at the world as more competitive. I think that's another theme. Like maybe your workplace will be more competitive, or just in general, you as a person will have to have a much more competitive outlook on life. Obviously, this is an angular house. This is a big deal. This is a big transit, and especially when it's conjunct your ascendant, it even takes more things into play. This will even more affect your appearance, okay? While you're going through this transit, who you thought you were will both be bolstered up and put on a pedestal and shined a light and then destroyed and taken down to be rebuilt again. You should have like a bring it on sort of energy to it. Like, yeah, I have been laying dormant, but yeah, now I'm ready to tackle life and I'm ready to take things on and all that sort of stuff. And you can also deal with, you know, isolation, and a lot of strong isolation as well. So just be cautious that you don't let paranoia take hold of you too much. You might think, oh, I heard in this video that, you know, people might give me the side eye a little bit more, so I need to act before anybody else, or, you know, I need to be on the move and the lookout. No, like, calm down, right? That's what I'm also trying to teach in this video is like, don't be too proactive with this stuff, you know, still be you know, oh, this is occurring to me. Oh, and just be aware, like, oh, these are the themes and how to handle it. Don't think like, oh, I need to go out there and, you know, just be attacking everybody else before they attack me. No. But should you be a little bit more on guard? And should you be a little bit more cautious? And should you not say everything about yourself to everyone? Yes. Does that mean that should you not tell anybody anything about yourself and like not tell your friends stuff? No. Does Pluto in the first house want to do that sometimes? Yes. So that will also be lessons, right? How much should you tell people about yourself? How much should people know about yourself, right? And where is that line? Are you being too protective? Do you have too many walls up? And do those need to be broken? Or do you not have enough? And do you need to put those on? Right? All that sort of stuff. I think boundaries, especially if you think about literally when Pluto crosses your 12th house line to your first house, right? On that line, that is going to teach you, I think, the height of boundaries, because it's literally like crossing the boundary of your chart from the end to the beginning. Your boundaries will be crossed at that point probably, and how will you deal with that? I'm wondering, I've never been through this transit, full transparency. Also, there will be no way that a superficial view of yourself will be able to get through this transit. Whether you have that superficial view of yourself, whether other people have that superficial view of yourself, right? You will really have to kind of learn who you are. You'll be forced to look in the mirror, literally and figuratively. This transit is very easy to interpret. It's a very literal transit. You, yourself, your identity, your outlook on life will be going through a lot of plutonic transformations, a lot of change. Now, specifically with it being in Aquarius, I think that you might feel like everybody's catching up to you a little bit, right? Like in how you view the world, how you see things, and you can really be ahead of that and use that to your advantage. Or you can be an Aquarius rising about that and look at that with a little side eye and be like judging everybody's style and be like, oh, I want to be the different one. All of you guys are trying to be me now, even though you just isolated me, right? Also, you will definitely be hugely affected in your maybe even like appearance with AI. Like maybe the Aquarius risings will be undergoing a lot of plastic surgery, a lot of, you know, the changes. They'll be the first ones to kind of raise their hand and take those Pluto and Aquarius risks. Maybe they'll be the ones that have the new technology, the new advancements, all that sort of stuff, but it will have to do with how they look. It'll have to do with who they are and how they view the world. So basically, yeah, you're just not really going to recognize yourself after this transit, honestly, which kind of brings me perfectly into Pluto transiting the second house. Let's back it up. You just had Pluto transiting your first house, or you're going through Pluto transiting your first house still. You're at your very end of it, right? So my God, go back to when Pluto started in Capricorn. Think about what you look like, what you acted like, who you were. Oh my God, embarrassing, right? You're laughing. You're laughing. You were a little baby, right? You were like, I was so different then. Like, yes, everybody goes through changes, and yes, that is a long period of time, but you especially, you would be like, people would not believe the person I used to be. I am an entirely changed and evolved human being now. I know myself a lot more now. I've made my own decisions for quite some time. I've been responsible for myself for quite some time. And people have tried to take me down because of that, you know, and have you let them? No, you're still here, right? You're still here, you're still going. That's basically what you've been going through, Pluto in the first house. Also, big thing with Pluto in the first house, it's been all about you, right? You might not want to admit it because it hasn't felt like that. It hasn't been as selfish as that, right? You know, you've been going through a lot of extreme experiences that have involved the people around you. How it has affected you has been kind of a big point of your life, right? That's kind of what you've been going through. Who you are, how you express things, why you express them, if you are allowed to express them, if you're not allowed to express them, all that sort of stuff. This can also be, after going through the first house, a breaking of control, right? With Pluto in the first house, there might have been a strong control on you. There might have been a strong eye, like watching you. You might have felt like that. And you might be getting away from that a little bit. You might have, it might still be there, but it might be a little less prominent. However, that person or that eye or that thing might be going into your second house, which is affecting your money, right? Maybe that person or that thing or that overarching idea or figurehead affected your self-esteem, affected how you see yourself. And now It's been affecting you so much that it's affecting your self-worth, and that's affecting your finances. However, this can be positive. Maybe this person, this overarching figure, has been like, you're great, I'm your boss, and I love you, and I think you're amazing. Or like, you know, we all think you're cool, and it's all been going really well. You really like yourself, all that sort of stuff. You have a lot of self-confidence, and now you're using that self-confidence to propel into the second house, which is finances, which is money, which is self-worth, right? So this is really a time of reworking your self-image and your self-confidence to kind of express and show the new you. You know, I got this new personality. It's time to buy some new shoes to show it off, right? I got this new personality. It's time to buy this new car to show it off, right? Now, this can be a time where you do make a lot of crazy spending decisions. Maybe I see Aquarius now as like the new kind of corporate boss. It's like the new bigwig. Like, I'm going to be a part of this company, but I'm going to get all these like figures and all these things and all these. You know what this feels to me? I may not be the boss, but I make the figures and statistics of a boss, right? Like Pluto Aquarius, like it's not Pluto and Capricorn. It's not all about being the CEO. It's about being a teammate, but being the best teammate and making the most money as the teammate, right? So you might be making some bold new moves in those situations, and this will affect your money. You might even be making some new decisions with money. Now, this is mostly for Capricorn risings. That doesn't mean that it's only for Capricorn risings. Naturally, Capricorn risings are usually a little bit cautious and a little bit detached from their money as it is, and you know, kind of cheap. And they usually, I find, they have a lot of money stored away. So they might be finding that they're needing to spend more money on things, spend more money on people, someone they love, something else, whatever it might be. There's just, you know what, I can summarize this very easily. Financial demands. There's going to be a lot of financial demands with Pluto going through your second house. There can be a breakdown of money, a breakdown of where you get your finances from. Your finances can change. Your financial status can really change. There can be a breakdown of it. You can go from really rich to really broke all of a sudden, or really broke to really rich and then back down. Like, there can be a lot of ups and downs. So this is the time to prepare. Capricorn risings are usually smart. They usually do think ahead. So, you know, if you heed this message, then you'll be smart. This is a good time to put some extra money away. Now, this is also could potentially be a good time for you to take risks if this is a well aspected transit for you. If this looks positive when it talks to the rest of your stuff, this is a time to take some risks, and this is a time to put yourself out there a little bit more. However, this is poorly aspected. This is a time to really cross your T's and dot your I's when it comes to your finances. There's just in general going to be loss and gains. No matter how you look at it, no matter how well aspected or poorly aspected it is, this is going to be loss and gains financially. And this will also very much reflect your self-worth. There will be a breakdown of your self-worth and how you value yourself and the other people, and it will have a lot of reflection upon what surrounds you, the level of abundance that surrounds you. This is also the time to double check who you're giving your money away to. Not only that, you know, you get a random call and you think it's somebody who's legit and it's a solicitor. It's somebody who's not legit and you give your money away. You know what I mean? Something like that. You have to just be careful about and be cautious about all that sort of stuff. Be cautious about what you're buying. Especially, you'll be making big financial decisions. This is a good time to make big financial decisions, but this is also a time to be cautious as well about your big financial decisions. Just in general, you're going to have many lessons to learn about money. And wherever we have Aquarius, we think we know everything already, right? You probably think you already know everything about money, but you don't, okay? Nobody does. And that's what Pluto and Aquarius transiting your second house will show you. There can also be a lot of power and jealousy struggles through money, you know, bad divorces, being taken to court, this person got all the money, I got all the money, all that sort of stuff. Money is going to be such a significant thing, and it's going to highlight how much you value it, right? So if you are a money hungry, grubby person that's in it for the wrong reasons, the world's going to show you that. And if you're, you know, too loose with your money, giving it away to the wrong people carelessly and not valuing yourself or your finances because of it, the world's going to show you that. Or, you know, if you're valuing yourself very well, the world's going to reward you for that, right? So just be very aware that this transit is very much how you treat your things, how you treat other people's things, how you treat your money, how you treat other people's money also reflects how you think about yourself. And this transit's really going to shine a light on that. All right, now let's go into the third house. So again, I like to, rewind, go back up a little bit. Let's talk about what you just went through with Pluto in the second house, because you might still have a little bit going through the second house. You might have just gotten out of that, all that sort of stuff, whatever it is. You just got out on a time that was really about shining a light on how you value yourself, how you value the things around you, how you treat the things that you value, how you treat your finances, how you treat yourself. What is your self-worth like? It's also just a major focus on the physical things, the things that are around you. That doesn't mean that there's absolutely no spiritual emphasis, because you can have a very spiritual connection to your items. You can have a very sentimental connection to your items, but it's all about what is your physical space, your connection to it, going through the loss and the reboot of that, right? The change of that, a change of status, all that sort of stuff. Maybe you have a new habit or a new collection of things because of this Pluto in the second house. That's also very common. A new obsession, a new collection, a new fixation. This can even be put on a person as well, or a few people. But now with it moving in the third house, I think that it's like, okay, now you have this collection of things. You have this, maybe even this abundance of knowledge, this rack full of stuff because you had Pluto in the second house, this really extreme interest. Now with it moving into the third house, how will you put it out there in your community? So I think Pluto in the third house also has to do with the mind mentally, an obsession with something of the mind, an intellectual obsession. So this again feeds into, you have this collection of things, now you're going to use it, now you're going to play with it, now you're going to put it into action. The third house is a much more action oriented house than the second house, right? You collected and hoarded the things in the second house. Now it's time to get them out and play with them in the third house. So you will probably become obsessed with your new interest or this new way of thought. You might have a new way of thinking about things, a new way of conducting your day-to-day routine in order to better suit your intellectual habits, for lack of a better word. There can really be, with Pluto in the third house, a breakdown of communication and communication styles. There might be a magnifying glass or a light shown on how you talk to people, how you conduct yourself, how you hold yourself, the opinions that you have, the viewpoints that you have. All that sort of stuff will be a major key thing, and how the community and your local, the people around you, your friend group, your family, your siblings, your extended family, right? The kind of groups close to the third house stuff, how they feel about that, how they feel about your new thought process. You might even have a new sibling. This can even be, with Pluto in the third house, incorporating a new extended family, right? And kind of all the complicated plutonic bullshit that comes with that. This is a time that if you're lying, you're gonna be exposed. Eventually, trust me. And now if you're not lying and somebody else around you is lying, somebody you care about, somebody you don't care about, positive or negative, this will be exposed, right? The things that people say, the truths that people say will come to a highlight, right? This is a major key theme, I think, in people that, if they're religious, while they're going through Pluto in the third house, they'll deal with a breakdown of structure in their religion. Either they'll not have a religion and then have one and keep with it, not have a religion, have one and lose it, have a religion, not have one anymore, have a religion, not have one, have one. You know what I mean? There's just going to be a lot of changes in those kinds of thoughts. But what it will mostly change is your community, your group, right? It'll be more seen as a social thing than it is a political ninth house thing. It'll be more of a community oriented thing. My community is this religion, right? So how do I break out of that? My community, has these thoughts, but I don't. So how do I deal with that difference, right? There'll just be discrepancies, right? And dealing with that, Pluto can deal with feeling outcasted as well, the rise and fall, being praised and then being ousted in your community, in your friend group, in these little kind of third housey sibling, three's a crowd kind of environments. I think that's the best way to say the third house. It's the three's a crowd kind of environments. You might have to keep secrets from people. You might have to lead a double life. That's a big theme with Pluto in the third house, leading a double life. Maybe after Pluto in the second house, you got all this money, right? And now you can go out and you're like, I can spend it on this whole other life, this whole other family. That's why I said I think Pluto in the third house is big themes. If you think of Pluto in the second house as going through divorce with this money struggles, again, this doesn't have to be as clear as this, but this is the overall arching themes. Then the third house would be okay, now you're building this new family and now you're dealing with these like interminglings of these like three's a crowd kind of family, right? Like these can be like part of a secret society and you have to keep a secret from your family. Like there's just a lot of secrecy when it comes to speeches, a lot of like trying to get to the root and the truth of what people are saying. There can be some shady deals because you have to remember that the third house rules Gemini, and so this can definitely be a house of shady deals, shady tradings, less than, you know, above board kind of stuff. But it can also be like, that's the way that you get along. That's the way that you survive. That's how you know how to live day to day, is by doing these trades, doing these little deals, all that sort of stuff, like being very Gemini. You can live in kind of some shady environments as well, some shady neighborhoods. Maybe, you know, you lost some money in Pluto in the second house and now you're having to live in a little bit less of a desirable neighborhood, and then, you know, you'll get yourself out of it because it's this Plutonic fear, right? So no matter what you're in, it's going to be revolutionized because this is Pluto in Aquarius. It's going to be changed. It's going to be revolutionized. There's going to be some new course set in action. Okay, it's going to feel different than how you've ever felt before. You're going to feel ostracized for it, especially with Pluto in the third house. You're going to feel ostracized for it majorly. You can maybe change schools, change neighborhoods. This isn't going to be big moves. Like, I mean, I wouldn't expect you to really move out of the country, but maybe you'll learn a new language within your local communities. This can also be a situation where you might become more moody. You might be experiencing a lot of explosive temperaments in your day-to-day, because the third house is like our everyday thoughts, our everyday brains, our everyday like activity, like not like sixth house everyday acts of service, everyday like tasks. The third house is like our everyday little activities that we do. So you can just get more, have more moodiness, have more stewiness, have more angst. Like Pluto in the third house to me is like teen angst vibes around you, within you. You can have teenagers that you're taking care of. You can be going into teenagehood, right? But it can just be that kind of vibe, that kind of moody sort of feeling. Or just like there's one person that you have to like, that you have to revolve your emotions around, you know, or you're making everybody else revolve their emotions around you, maybe, you know. Definitely be cautious with sibling relationships. That I'm not going to say that all your sibling and, you know, extended family relationships are going to be terrible and are going to be ended. No. But should you trust them as much as you maybe would normally during this time? I would say no. I would say expect a little bit of backstabbing to happen. You backstab them, they backstab you, right? But it's like, will they stand that test of loyalty, right? Pluto in the third house. This will also shine a light on mental health for sure. If you're taking any drugs or supplements or pills day to day, there will be a light shown on how that affects you. How dependent are you on that? You will be going through that whole cycle. You know what I mean? So if you're starting a new medication during this time, that would make sense. If you just got a new diagnosis during this time, that would make sense. All that sort of stuff. Even like chronic pain, I think, can come into Pluto transiting the third house. But no matter what it is, okay, you are going to go through a major transformation of the mind. So now let's go into Pluto transiting your fourth house. Again, let's back it up a little bit. You just got out of Pluto in the third house, okay? Your mind has been transformed. Your community has been transformed. How you think and speak and act and conduct yourself in the day-to-day has been transformed. How you look at people and judge people and critique people has been changed. Your community, your sibling, your extended family environments has gone through a lot of change and transformation. Also, maybe you've been doing some sketchy shit in the neighborhood. Like, let's just be real. And you're going into the fourth house. How does this affect your family? How does this affect your home life, right? You've been doing some sketchy shit in the neighborhood. Is this catching up to you? How does this affect your family? How does this affect your home life, okay? I mean, Pluto in the third house can be a significant transit, but it's kind of like you were able to skirt some responsibility for a while. And when Pluto goes into your fourth house, this is a major, intense, transformative time for you, right? You thought you were maybe immune to some of these home problems or home life problems, but this is going to change, right? You've been going through all these things externally in the third house that are outside of you. So now it's time to think, like, how does this affect you, right? Maybe you lost a friend group during this time. Maybe you're a little bit more alone than you were before. Maybe you don't talk to your family like you used to. Maybe there's only one or a few people that are close to you now. Whatever it is, there's going to be a little bit more isolation, a little bit more alone time with Pluto in the fourth house. You're going to be really reflecting upon how this, what I think is this Pluto in the third house transit, how did it affect you? You might have been going through some mental health problems, some neighborhood issues, some inner, you know, relationship problems. How is this trauma affecting you? right? Who are you loyal to? Who is your real family? Pluto in the 4th house is very easy to interpret, but a very big transit. This affects who you are in your core. The 4th house is the root of the chart, of the circular chart. It's your root. What you really want for happiness when you unwind and relax. What makes you feel safe. So Pluto going through the house that you want to feel the safest in is scary. It's going to change things. It's going to make things uncomfortable in the home. Maybe you've had these like weird extended family situations and now you're having to live with them, or you're having to live with the only family member that you still talk to after that. Whatever it is, your family is going through changes, and that can be really hard emotionally. Your home life is going to play a major role in your life, more than your career, more than your relationships, more than yourself. You're going to have to put all those things aside, and you are going to be spending most of your time focusing on creating a family, creating a home, nurturing your family relationships, dealing with the family and the roots and the trauma and all that stuff that you've been given and been passed down. You're going to have to address. There's going to be discourse in the home. There's going to be unsettling emotions. There's going to be a lot of revealing of childhood trauma. There's going to be a lot of revealing of family, ancestral trauma. You might move home. There's going to be a lack and gain of emotional security. You're going to go through, ups and downs of who you're bonded with and who you're close with in the family. Your family ties will be tested. The limits will be pushed. You will probably have to move back home at least once, or be in the home consistently, your family home. Even if you're not living with your parents, you might have to live in your family home. You might have to be around them. You might have to take care of them, right? The responsibilities of the home will be very, very high. You will probably have to pick a career based off of not your career wants and needs and desires, but rather your home and family needs and wants and desires. Or you might feel pushed to. You might have to financially support your family. You might become the backbone of your family. Your family might go through a lot of hardship. Your home life might go through a lot of transformations. But it will be really beautiful, because what will come out of it will be this revolutionized family, and not what you expected, yes, but it'll be a stronger, more capable unit than you could have ever wished for. If you take on this challenge, if you shed what is not necessary, if you make yourself get uncomfortable, then you can really have such a satisfying home and family life that can come to fruition after this. So yes, when it's conjunct the 4th house, I do think this is a really, really hard transit. But when I see this transit, because most of it's been playing out for Libra risings, and as you know, I have a lot of Libra risings in my life, they might not realize it, but I can tell that it is a very rewarding experience for them, as much as it is very demanding. It's also a very honest experience. Now moving into if Pluto is transiting your 5th house. So I actually have Pluto in the 5th house natally, and I will have to say, I like having Pluto in the 5th house natally. Mine is very healthy. I'm lucky with that. Yes, it does have its things, definitely. We're all a little, with our Pluto placement. But am I thankful it's in this house? Yes. Of course, this can be a hard placement if you have a bunch of energy in there. But I think that even though this isn't the most intuitive placement for Pluto to be in, I think that it is a pretty fruitful, I should say, house for Pluto to be in. Now, you just went through a really hard time with Pluto in the 4th house, okay? You're probably exhausted. Every relationship you've had has been tested. Lies have been exposed. Time and time again, relationships, family relationships have been tested to the limits. You've had to move and shed things so many times. Your home has probably been in jeopardy for quite some time, right? This has been not very fun, right? Pluto in the 4th house is not a very fun transit to be experiencing. Everything can be very serious because Pluto takes a while to transit through. You can just get used to this undertone of kind of misery and destruction that kind of happens, right? And when Pluto kind of lets up and kind of goes away from your 4th house and goes away from your IC point, it can feel a little bit like, whoa, what? You know? If you really kind of took on those challenges with Pluto in the 4th house, then hopefully what you have moving into Pluto in the 5th house is probably a smaller unit, a family unit, a group unit around you, but a much more healthy and happier and fruitful one, right? So that's, we go into the 5th house. The 5th house is all about children, what you create, the things that you make, how you express yourself. It is such a fun house, right? I'm probably biased, but this is definitely a time, like make or break time. How are you going to express yourself in this world, okay? What is going to be your mark? What is going to be your legacy? You know, your interests and your activities and your hobbies are really going to take a strong lens. You might get more interested in the metaphysical. You might get more interested in the occult. You probably already had a deep subconscious connection to the paranormal and the occult when Pluto was going through your 4th house. But with the 5th house, you might be exploring it less as an experience and more as like a fun new activity. Now, this is a long transit, so it doesn't mean, I'm not trying to say that if you start Pluto in the 5th house, then you're just gonna have kids the next day, but it would make sense that throughout this transit you would have kids, but also it would make more sense because it's such a long transit whenever anything goes through a house, that if you have kids during this time, this is going to be very important to you. This is going to change your life. They are going to become the main focus of your life. Or if you have, you know, a main project, a main like, oh, I'm writing my Magnus Opum, is that what it's called? You know, like that's going to happen when Pluto transits your 5th house. This is definitely a time where it's like make or break time with your creations. You are either going to finish them or you're going to destroy them, right? That's very Pluto in the 5th house. Also with Pluto in the 5th house, I think that there can be some stubbornness because obviously Pluto's going into a fixed house. This can be a very my way or the highway kind of way about going about things, but with your hobbies, with your interests, with your activities. Even sometimes with the way, like if you do have kids, with the way that you parent, right? You can be, with Pluto transiting your 5th house, protective of your kids, or if you are the kid, feel like your parents are being overprotective of you, right? That can be a major theme. Like, oh, I have a dance mom, or oh, I have a helicopter dad. You know, all that sort of stuff is a big theme with Pluto going through your 5th house, or oh, you are the helicopter parent. Whatever it is, it can also just be a theme of legacy with Pluto in the 5th house as well. You can have issues with children as well. This can, sometimes with Pluto in the 5th house, if it's roughly aspected or if you've been careless, this can be a time of sexual issues coming to play, or any sexual issues that you haven't, what's the word, like confronted from the past, will definitely be shined a light on. If you have a lot of fun, lighthearted, non-serious stuff in your 5th house, this will be a real big change for you. If you have like Mars in the 5th house, Venus in the 5th house, Jupiter in the 5th house, and then you have Pluto going to the 5th house, this might be a little bit surprising because you take your relationships very lightly, you take your romance very lightly, and now it's like, wow, I am taking this seriously all of a sudden, or I find an attraction to somebody that I see as very serious, and I used to not feel this way before. I used to not be as committed as I used to, right? Pluto in the 5th house is going to make all of your lighthearted relationships feel a lot more serious, a lot more committed, a lot more magnetic. You know, you might be like, I have a twin flame, you know, you might have some trauma bonds that you make with people, or all those sort of like soulmate things you might want to put on the experiences that you have with Pluto in the 5th house. Now, what I think all that means is like you have fated relationships. Like there are fated relationships. If you want to look at it in astrology, you'll see north and south node connections with the people that come into your life when you have Pluto going through your 5th house. You will probably have some very competitive and jealous people in your hobbies. People, like the things that you create, people are going to be jealous of. The things that you make, people are going to be jealous of. The people that you date, people are going to be jealous of, and what that means. You can also have hobbies that are very competitive. So this can also be a thing where it's like the rise and fall of a star, right? You're boosted up, you got first chair if you're a violinist, you know, you won platinum if you're at a dance competition, you got first, right? And then all the glory, and then all of a sudden, how do you deal with the fall, the inevitable fall from that, right? That can also be a Pluto in the 5th house transit. How do you deal with your rise and falls from glory when it comes to your creative talents and your creative achievements? Also with Pluto in the 5th house, you can have more, I guess like provocative power, I think, out of all, you know, obviously first house Pluto can have this a little bit, but out of all the Pluto transits I've talked about so far, this is definitely the first Pluto transit that I'm talking about, that it's like there will be a little bit more of a special magnetism to you when you have this, a little bit more of a va-va-voom, a little bit more of a darkness. Maybe you create more like things with darker themes, things with more plutonic themes, things with more plutonic colors. All that sort of stuff can definitely come from Pluto in the 5th house. You can also find more plutonic like people that you're involved with in relationships, scorpionic like people, all that sort of stuff. But what I will say about Pluto in the 5th house is this is the house of fun. You can't not prioritize whatever house Pluto is transiting. And so with Pluto in the 5th house, it's like, what? You can't help but prioritize fun? Like, let's really say what it comes down to. Like, that sounds nice. Like, that's why I don't think Pluto in the 5th house, like, yes, every, you know, thing has its hardships and all, you know, all that stuff. But I think that Pluto in the 5th house can be like, this is emphasizing fun. Yes, it will transform how you have fun. You can have rise and highs and lows throughout that fun. But it's just like, well, it's fun to highlight fun, is it not? Like, no, that's like the point of it, right? You know, romance, sex, all that sort of stuff. But you do still have to be careful, right? Like, if you're not fully careful, this is Pluto. The heat can fall back on you. If you're not somebody, like again, if you're somebody that natally has a very like lighthearted 5th house, this can be a lot harder of a time for you than somebody who has like Saturn in their 5th house, Lilith in their 5th house. Like for those kind of energies, this is just going to feel like you're extra in your power, your, you know, your long-term goals of, you know, these creative expressions and commitments are coming to power. But if you're more of a flaky, lighthearted 5th house, this might be hard to take this stuff so seriously. You know, now I can't just like black out on Xanax for 5 days and not really like give a fuck about, you know, what happens. Now actually like I have repercussions of that. Pluto's in my 5th house, well, you know, but for somebody that is like a harsher 5th house, it won't be that weird. But anyways, okay. Now let's get into Pluto in your 6th house. Okay, so let's be honest, Pluto in your 6th house sucks to suck. Pluto just went through your 5th house. Fun times are over now. Pluto's in your 6th house, all right? That fun, magnetic, interesting, like, va-va-voom you just held with Pluto going through your 5th house, you don't have that anymore. You just have, like, obsessive-compulsive tendencies and, like, just, like, health issues and just, like, caring too much about things that don't matter, like, you know, you used to care about cool things like your kids and creative expression and romance and all that sort of stuff. And before that, you cared about your family. Now, for some reason, you just take things really seriously, right? Just basically fun times are over, okay? Maybe you're getting a little older, whatever that means to you, okay? I shouldn't be so mean about it, right? Maybe you're just getting a little bit older. Now you want to transform your life. Because I can be kind of negative about Pluto in the 6th house. I honestly don't think I think it's a hard transit. I don't think it's an easy transit. As you know, I have Pluto in the 5th house natally. I went through Pluto in the 6th house at a very young age for most of my life. And when I was going through it, most of the time, I was just like scared of everything for no reason. Like when I was a little kid, yeah, you're usually scared of everything, but I was especially more scared of everything than most people, I think. And I definitely think that my parental influence played a big role in my Pluto transiting my 6th house. I'm sharing my experience because I think it is so relevant, right? I'm not trying to talk about myself. I just think you can never have more valid of examples than the ones that you've gone through. I know that they're just anecdotes, but at this point, astrology is just a bunch of anecdotes that have been like reconfirmed, right? Anyway, so when I had Pluto in the 6th house, I had a very like traditional Jewish grandparents, right? They were very like obsessive about everything, very nitpicky. Like I thought my grandparents must have both just had everything in the 6th house. And I definitely think they're a big influence because I spent a lot of time at my grandparents with my grandparents and my grandparents had a lot of influence on my life. I think they had a lot of a role to play with it. Also Pluto, you have to think about Pluto as being generational influence, karmic influence, ancestral influence that is outside of your control. So my grandparents, I felt like were a key play, you know, that like thing over your shoulder that I always talk about with Pluto, how Pluto feels that thing looming over your shoulder, right? They were that key role in like putting Pluto transiting in my 6th house. You know, they were the kind of grandparents that were like, if you get cold, you'll catch a cold. They worry too much about what I'm eating, how I'm eating it. Just, I don't need to go into it, but it's just like, well, I do need to go into it. It's Pluto in the 6th house. These are the things that you're going to care about. Oh, exactly how I'm eating. Oh, I'm going to get sick. Oh, I'm going to be cold. Oh, I'm going to be this. Oh, I don't have that. Oh, I don't have this. Oh, I need this little thing. Oh, I need that. Oh, but that's not perfect. Oh, like my grandparents, they had fine china. They had nice placemats, all that sort of stuff. And we would always eat at their house. And we'd have nice traditional like Jewish holiday events. And it would be a big deal. And no, this would not even be the time to pull out a plate. This is the time to pull out the paper plates. This is the time, like, even though we have all this stuff displayed and out, and you have to look at it, buried Pluto in the 6th house, look at all these fancy things, we're going to have you with paper plates. And then instead of doing the whole point of paper plates, which is throwing the paper plates away in the trash and not having to wash them, we're still going to wash, this was my grandparents, we're still going to wash the paper plates before we throw them away. That's the kind of example of the lunacy that is Pluto transiting the 6th house that you'll have to deal with. Either you're going to be like that or somebody that you know or around you is going to be like that, right? Be cautious of your mental health during this time, guys. Take care of yourself, okay? But don't allow that paranoia to set in, right? I think that Pluto in the 6th house, if I were to give advice during this transit, what I think I needed is I just needed somebody to shake me and be like, it's fine. Like, they're kind of nutso. Like, you can just chill out. When I was going through Pluto in the 6th house, like, I would freak out if I didn't have an assignment done. I would be hysterical. I'd be hysterical if I did something wrong. I'd be hysterical if I was late. I'd be hysterical if anything at all in the 6th house, the day-to-day little uniformed, little nitpicky 6th housey Virgo things, if any of that went the littlest bit wrong, it would be like, oh, the end of the world for me. It'd be like a Plutonic-sized event. But it's not a Plutonic-sized event. It's a 6th house little thing that'll you'll forget about, you know? But you're making it, you can make it a Plutonic-sized event with this Pluto in the 6th house stuff. Basically, this will really transform your day-to-day habits. This will play a big role on what servitude and servantry means to you. How you will serve somebody else, right? If you notice, I was talking about, I do this for my grandparents, I do this for my grandparents, I do this for my grandparents. That was very much the theme of my childhood, right? Even my parents were like, you have to do this for your grandparents. And so that, like, what servitude means to you and having to be of service and having to do things for somebody else or for some greater good or for some higher purpose or for some higher good, right? I had to get, like, bat mitzvahed for my grandparents, right? That is a very big theme of Pluto in the 6th house. Pluto transiting your 6th house. So Pluto in the 6th house will also really shine a light on if you enjoy, like, what you're doing in your day-to-day. Also, especially with Pluto in Aquarius, how technology affects your day-to-day. How do you interact with technology? How will that revolutionize you? How dependent are you on technology? And this is actually going through for most Virgo risings. Oh my God. So this is so potent. If you're a Virgo rising with Aquarius mostly in your 6th house going through this transit, this is really going to shine a big light on your mental health, your habits, your obsessions, your quality of life, because of how impeded they are or not impeded they are by your mental health and your day-to-day little things and all those Virgo issues that you get strung up on. There will be a real breakdown and revolutionization of it. You might find alternative medicine for the first time. You might be open and interested in alternative medicine for the first time, just because you might be so desperate that you might, you know, look for anything that you can. So you might, you know, un-Virgo rising that. All of your fears and anxieties and paranoias that you have avoided for your life, you will be confronted, right? This is like the face your fears kind of time. Now, it's the kind of fears that you say when you're a kid. I'm afraid of bugs. I'm afraid of flying. I'm afraid of heights. I'm afraid of, you know, it's not the kind of fears that you say when you're an adult, which are like the 8th house fears, like death, the IRS, what else? The man, you know, the plagues, you know, no. 6th house rules more of those little day-to-day fears. So those things that you've tried to avoided, you're going to have to confront. Like, if you don't like scary movies, that's going to be a highlight, right? I don't know. Be careful that you don't become so obsessed with your health that it makes you unhealthy. Be careful that you don't become so hyper-fixated on your muscles and all that sort of stuff that it doesn't deteriorate your health. You can be definitely blamed for things that you're not responsible in the workplace. I'm so sorry, Virgo. I know that sucks. You definitely might feel the heat. You definitely might have some vengeful coworkers, obsessive coworkers, issues in the workplace, issues with your coworkers, issues at work, issues at school, issues with the day-to-day, all that sort of stuff. This can also indicate some eating disorder problems. This can also indicate some performance issues in sex. This can also indicate, you know, a change in careers, a change in your work. Maybe your work was one that was just serving you for a day-to-day purpose and it wasn't serving you on the grand sphere of things. And so you're, you know, the world kind of asked you to adjust. You also might turn your hobby into a business, and it kind of make it your day-to-day work. You know, that fifth house thing that you were obsessed with, that fifth house thing that you loved, you might now try to make money off of and turn into, you know, your job. So let's move into Pluto transiting your 7th house. So this is obviously another big one because this is, again, an angular house. The angular houses are 1, 4, 7, and 10. The 7th house is the house of relationships. But again, I'm going to take it back. First, what did you just come from? Pluto going through your 6th house, okay? So you just went through a bunch of rules, restrictions, regulations, daily power, troubles, mental health issues, physical health issues, obsessive, compulsive tendencies, a change of job, a change of careers. Just basically, you've just been really obsessed with your routine, really fearful. You probably live alone now or want to live alone. And it may be even hard for you to have other people in your life just because you have become so fixated on your own daily routine. As much as we don't think of the 6th house as a selfish house because it's not like me, give, it's not selfish in that way, but it is a very self-centered house because it is the house of health, our own personal health, our own daily routine. So it can be a very self-centered, selfish house in that way. And that's not me putting a negative label or positive label on that word. People like freak out when they hear the word selfish. I don't think it means one thing or another. It just is like self-focused, right? But now, moving into Pluto in the 7th house, it is not that way. It's almost like with Pluto in the 7th house, you have to like reintegrate yourself back into society after like just kind of going down this winding rabbit hole of just like obsessive tendencies, 6th house little compulsions. So with Pluto going through your 7th house, the way that you view relationships and what you want from a relationship and your expectations of a relationship will forever change. Your view of people will be highlighted. You know, this can be a very psychologically driven time because the 7th house is the house of others and Pluto is a very psychological house. So you might find an interest in things like studying why people do the things they do, why individuals are the way they are, right? I have been going through this transit. I'm going to be coming to the end of this transit for me personally, and obviously I found astrology during this transit and I'm moving into the 8th house. It makes sense. I'm going to get into it even more. But this is almost like the start of that. This is like, oh, I'm interested in people. Oh, why do we treat people this way and not people that way, right? Why do I feel this way about this person and not this way about this person, right? I'm just kind of paying attention to those things. That doesn't mean that you're going to get better and have like this great social awareness. What it does mean is that you're going to be aware of your social awareness, right? People are really going to say like, this is you, this is who you are, or this is who I need you to be, or this is who you need to be, or this is who I want you to be, right? There's going to be a lot of expectations in that way. You also might be attracted to more darker scorpionic people during this time. You might want to just only form a lot of really intense, intimate bonds with 1 or 2 people. I've always had like one strong person in my life at a time. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that I've had Pluto going through my 7th house for so long. With it specifically being an Aquarius, this is pretty much only happening for Leo risings for the most part. It'll happen a little bit for obviously Cancer risings coming to the end for us, but this is pretty much only happening for Leo risings. And Leo risings, you are very distant and almost like afraid of people, right? Like you keep people at an arm's length because you have your 7th house in Aquarius. You can feel a little bit detached, right? Now with Pluto coming through here, it's almost like your biggest fear is coming to fruition. You are going to form attachments. You are going to form bonds with people, or at least maybe it will be bonds with technology, bonds with AI, but for the most part, it's like you are going to have a breakdown of this like detachment that you have towards people. You are not going to be able to have it for much longer, right? You are going to be forced to form bonds and what that feels like and looks like. And for you guys, Leo risings with Aquarius in your 7th house, that is going to feel very, very uncomfortable. If you have 7th house planets already, this is not going to feel as uncomfortable for you. It's going to feel like, finally, I've had so much trouble breaking this wall with people, but now you might feel like you get an opportunity to finally break that wall with other people, right? If you have prominent Aquarius placements, even though you are a Leo rising. So you might be more comfortable with this. Now, if you don't have anything in the 7th house except for like a lot of people of this age will have Uranus in there or Neptune in there. That's only going to make it more uncomfortable to form intimate bonds with people. So this is going to really change what people see in you, right? Like, you are not going to be able to keep people at much of an arm's distance anymore. They're going to see you. People are going to start seeing you. And as a Leo rising, that can be kind of intimidating because this is really going to, they're going to see your moon and you want to show your sun. They're also going to see all the darker sides of you, right? When Pluto comes through your 7th house, people are really going to kind of villainize you a little bit. And I feel uncomfortable saying that because I just went through this placement and I'm like, I don't want to put out there that I think people were like villainizing me or victimizing me or whatever it might be. But yes, that can show up a lot in this energy. You know, abusive relationships also comes up. But I think more than anything, because this is a transit, this is not a natal placement, it's like the opportunity for abusive relationships will come up time and time again. And it's like, how will you deal with that? How will you handle that? Will you stay? Will you go? Will you put your foot down? Will you create boundaries, right? This is another one where it's going over a strong and firm boundary. When it passes over from the 6th house to the 7th house and it's on your descendant point, this is a big deal because it's crossing a boundary. So you will probably have somebody in your life cross a boundary. People in your life will start crossing boundaries because Pluto in the 6th house has all their boundaries up, all their walls up, does not allow anybody in. When you get Pluto in the 7th house, you're having to open them up a little bit. You're having to make yourself to start to be a little bit more vulnerable. But it's going to be a little bit more than you're used to. It's going to really just feel like you're doing constant shadow work with Pluto going through your 7th house, right? Am I projecting? Is this me? How do I deal with this part of me? Is this good? Is this bad? How do I direct this energy? People are going to be very intimate and very vulnerable with you. And you will want people to be very intimate and vulnerable with you, right? This is not a time where you want shallow, surface level relationships. Even more than Pluto in the 5th house transit, this is a transit where you really do not want any surface level relationships. You're also not protecting yourself. You have some of your guards down a little bit more. You're opening yourself up, I think, to more vulnerable, open relationships, which is why, of course, there's going to be some bad people that get in. And you may think, wouldn't this happen more in the 8th house? There's more of a possibility for you to be opened up to like a relationship or a thing, circumstance. But in the 7th house, there's more of a freedom and it's Libra. It sees the best in people. Scorpio is very guarded. Scorpio is very protected. I'll only open myself up to these people. Libra can sometimes be like, I want to get to know people, right? The 7th house Libra. Like when my Pluto first started going through the 7th house, what I would always start with asking people was, what's the worst thing that ever happened to you? Which is a crazy thing to start a conversation with. And now I'm older, I wouldn't do that, but honestly, no regrets. I would just say that at parties, I would say that anywhere, like that would just be my starting point of conversation. It would be so interesting how people would deal with that. Obviously now I like astrology, that's what it is for me. It's a little less socially awkward. That is a very autistic move, yes, but also very Pluto transiting your 7th house sort of move. And again, notice how I said I wouldn't start with that anymore, right? I moved out of that transit, but I'm glad I did that because that's what I was looking for. I was looking for intense relationships, and you're kind of baiting that on, aren't you, a little bit? I'll be honest, right? This is going to shine a light on one or a few major key relationships and key themes within those relationships. The way that you look at people and the way people look at you will forever be changed and transformed, right? Before I went through Pluto in the 7th house, I did not have astrology, I did not have any of that stuff, none of that interest. I did not look at people the same way I do now. I look at people very differently. I have a very different viewpoints of the way I look at people. Even not just astrology, just an easy example, right? You also might deal with issues of like being excluded. Exclusion might be a big theme, whether you'll be excluded because of your race, because of your nationality, because of your gender, because of this or that, because of your opinions, because of who you are, because of this person doesn't like you, right? But you will be dealing with a lot of people not liking you. But now this is the house of open enemies, so people are going to be a lot more honest about who doesn't like you, right? When I was going through my Pluto in the 7th house, I was very much upfront about who I didn't like. I would just go up and be like, I don't like you, I don't like you, I don't like you, right? And people were kind of maybe a little bit shadier, much more plutonic about it towards me. They would do underhanded things to show that they didn't like me, which is very Pluto transiting your 7th house. So that may be something that you're dealing with. You will also majorly deal with people trying to control you, and you needing to break free from that. I dealt with the loss of my mother during this time. I saw her as a very like friend as well than a mom, so it makes sense that this was when she passed, because it was almost like losing my best friend as well as a mother. Very Pluto transiting your 7th house. It doesn't mean that you're going to lose somebody literally. But there are major themes of death metaphorically or literally, like as far as contact, not having contact with them. Pluto in the 7th house will really shed through those relationships that aren't serving you anymore, or you aren't serving them anymore. I think that, oh yes, we think always like, oh, this person isn't serving me or they're toxic to me, but sometimes it's like you're toxic for each other. You guys aren't serving each other. You're not serving them. You're not helping them. You're not for them anymore, right? And that's what Pluto in the 7th house will really teach you, that people come in almost like these karmic patterns sometimes, and sometimes they're here to impact you and then kind of fade away. And who remains after your Pluto in the 7th house transit, which is a very long transit, is going to show who's going to be there for a long time, right? Which is kind of a perfect way to segue into Pluto in the 8th house. I talked about Pluto in the 7th house just now, but basically, you know, you've shed a lot of the relationships that you don't need, right? You had to raise up in a concentration of my relationships, how people see me, how people view me, how I view people, where my place is within people, what my place is within friendships. That has been a culmination, that has been a focus, right? You had a lot of friends, right? And then it shed all that. Got rid of all that for good reasons, hard reasons, you know, easy reasons. It got rid of all what you didn't need, and now you're moving into Pluto in the 8th house. So you're only bringing this time a person or a few people or a few sacred sentimental things with you, right? The unnecessary people have been shed, and now it's a honing in on a vulnerability with one or a few people. So yes, Pluto transiting the 8th house. This is the transit that will be affecting me for pretty much all of Pluto and Aquarius time period, as I'm a Cancer rising with Aquarius in my 8th house. This is a transit that I've been dreading the most talking about, because if you know anything about me, you know that I have a history of talking shit about Pluto in the 8th house natally, Pluto in the 8th house in progressed, Pluto in the 8th house in composite, Pluto in the 8th house just in general. People have already asked me, you know, am I nervous about this transit? Which I did answer that question a little bit. I've talked about this a little bit in a previous video, just like a Q&A. But oh my god, yeah. I mean, like, I am nervous for this transit. You expect there to be a lot of vulnerability with Cancer risings, and it can be, but it also only goes so far. There's a lot that Cancer risings have a detachment to and trouble with going deep into. Most Cancer risings, not all. One's with Aquarius in the 8th house. And basically what Pluto and Aquarius in the 8th house will say is like, it's going to really break us of that fear. It's going to force us to get attached to people again. There also might be a fear of getting attached to people because of just going through Pluto in the 7th house. But Pluto in the 8th house is going to force us to create bonds that are even more permanent and extensive, that we care about even more than we ever thought we would, and that we feel comfortable with even. Like, maybe this is what we want, maybe this is what we don't want, it doesn't matter, but it's going to be, I think, very obviously transformative. Now, Pluto in the 8th house also goes through themes of sex, death, trauma, regeneration, rebirth, all those Pluto themes. Pluto is at home here. However, Pluto is not at home in Aquarius, right? So that's why I'm like, ah! Right? Maybe if I was Pluto in Scorpio, I'd be like, I'm ready. Pluto in the 7th house felt like, oh, everybody else has those plutonic issues, right? Put it on everybody else, put it on your shadow. With Pluto in the 8th house, it's like now you're dealing with everybody else's plutonic issues. Does that make sense? Probably issues with HR, probably issues with money, finances, shared resources. This can be definitely a time that you're trying to heal traumatic experiences. Childhood traumas, past traumas come up and play a big role. Or if you're young, childhood traumas are created. You're really diving very deep into yourself. Like with Pluto in the 7th house, it's like you've been diving deep into everybody else. But with Pluto in the 8th house, you're diving in deep into who you really are in times of crisis. That will be revealed. And that is very stressful, right? This really will weed out anything that isn't important. And you will really know during this transit what is important and what matters to you, right? Pluto, especially Pluto in the 8th house, people are famous for getting things and destroying them, getting them and destroying them. And it'll be like an endless thing of like getting it stranded, getting it stranded, getting it stranded. Also, I think defending yourself, right? Standing up for yourself. How do you hold your power? Now this, like Pluto in the 5th house, is another one that I see that holds a lot of magnetism. Now Pluto going through the 7th house doesn't really hold magnetism. It sees a lot of magnetism in the other people, and then when it sees it in other people, it gets reflected in them, right? Now, Pluto in the 8th house is the one that holds the magnetism, is the one that holds that power. And so it's like, what do you do with that? How are you responsible with that? This might be the first time any of us get power as Cancer risings, right? Or just in general, this might be the first time you ever experience having power, right? What do you do with that? How do you handle that? It'll really shine a light on that, even if that's just in small circumstances. How do you do without power? How do you do with a lack of power? How do you stand up for yourself when you're the underdog? Themes of sex, transformation through sex, healing the way you have sex, healing what sex means to you, healing what lineage and legacy means to you, creating lineage, that kind of stuff mattering to you, like legacy mattering to you, right? You're going to learn that you cannot hold on to anything. You have to hold on to everything loosely, which is so painful. Nobody wants to hear that, right? Even just saying that, I'm like, ugh. You now have these Pluto problems when Pluto transits your 8th house. Like, people ain't gonna like you for no reason. People are just gonna have problems with you. You're gonna have problems with people. You're gonna get bad vibes. Again, you're gonna dive deeper and deeper into the occult, why you do the things you do. Now with Pluto in the 8th house, you're interested in why you do the things you do, why the people closest to you do the things they do, why human species do the things they do, right? It's dissecting it even further. You might get more into anatomy. I think Scorpio is really all about anatomy, the inside of the body, because Scorpio loves to like get inside and research and be the detective. So yeah, really learning about the even like metaphysical, spiritual sides of the body, the mind, philosophy, sociology, getting into it even more and more seriously and looking at it through a much more emotional lens instead of a much more intellectual lens like you probably did with Pluto going through your 7th house. I think there's also a lot of pain with this placement. So yeah, Pluto in the 8th house, it's just very intuitive. It's just all the Plutonic themes. Now with it in Aquarius, again, there's a little bit more of, I think, a fear of technology, a fear of AI, a fear of advancements. The advancements really changing and taking over our industry, changing our sources of power, changing how we feel about things, change how we do things. I think we are going to be one of the people that are very affected by this Pluto and Aquarius transit, whether you have energy in the 8th house or not, just because it's in our 8th house and it's just such a powerful house. Oh goodness. Okay, so I mean, I can just keep repeating the same themes of Pluto and Aquarius, but just watch the themes of Pluto and Aquarius back and that will be the themes of your life, just on an individual level. Okay, let's move on to Pluto in the 9th house, or Pluto transiting the 9th house. So you just went through it, you guys. Can you tell me how it was? Can you please? Can you please give me some words of advice from people that have gone through it themselves? Okay, you have been transformed. You have been changed. Your life is nothing like it was before. Your attachments have been shown and taken away and shown and taken away again. You've been built up, torn down, built up, torn down. Your life has gone through all the changes. Like, you have been through all the Plutonic themes, all the Aquarian themes, especially because you just went through Pluto in Capricorn with this. For the most part, you have been dealing with themes of, like, especially power, bosses, control issues, like so much of those sorts of money, finances, other people's money, your money, other people being dependent on your money has been a huge theme for you, I bet. Or you being dependent on other people's money, depending. So much hardship, so much seriousness, so much just emotional turmoil and drama. Will it ever end? You know what? I think it might for a second. I think that Pluto going through your 9th house, if you take it by the horns and you are impassioned and embracing life, it can be a really good experience for you, right? Because after the 8th house, after you've been like, right, all through that shit, it's time to, the 9th house, open yourself up. I've been through that. Now we move on, right? We're past that. That's behind us, right? I see this as a breath of fresh air. Will it be easy? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. If you have a lot of energy in the 9th house or a lot of energy squaring this, it might be a little bit harder for you. But I think this can be a really nice transit because it's just like, hey, you've gone through all this shit that probably wasn't even about you. It was probably about all this other ancestral trauma, drama, legacy, you know, plutonic death, rebirth for the higher, greater good of you, or whatever it might be moving. I don't know. Whatever it might be. You've been through all this stuff. Now it's about who are you now? Who are you after all this? Right? Explore you. Explore the world. What is the world after all this? What is life after all that? Right? What's out there? What else is out there? Now, what will I do now that I have all these options, right? It's another one of those placements where it might be a little bit intimidating because you have all these options now. What will you do? Will you be scared? Will you be scared and run back into your hole? Or will you not? Will you get out there, right? Will you put yourself out there? This could even be putting yourself out intellectually, putting yourself out emotionally, putting yourself out vulnerably emotionally. I just hid my emotions and only told them to the closest people I know for so long because it was in the 8th house. Now I'll be more open with it. I'll be more honest. I'll share my experience. I'll share my life experience. I'll share my healing journey. Or fuck a healing journey. I'm over that now. I'm gonna have fun. I'm gonna explore. It is time to explore what you were once too scared to explore. And that stuff can be scary still. It can still be intimidating, right? But it should feel, I guess I just like the 9th house, so that's why I'm saying this. I love the feeling of learning something new. So if you have a bad relationship with the idea of learning something new, that's kind of, I think, what's going to be exposed in this 9th house thing. Like, if you're comfortable with learning new things culturally, picking up, right? Being on your toes, being open, being expansive, if you're comfortable with all that, and if you like learning new things and that gets you excited, then you're really going to enjoy this transit. If that scares you, you still might enjoy this transit. It just might be a little bit more uncomfortable for you. How you feel about the world and where you think it will go is going to change, and you're going to feel very strongly about that. Politics, philosophy, spiritual thought, your view on the world at large is going to really be highlighted, and you can kind of be tyrannical with it, honestly, during this time. You can feel very passionately about your politics. You can feel very passionately about your religion, about your spirituality, about all that sort of stuff, and you want to share it, right? You feel like it is tried and true. You feel like you can be a little bit of a know-it-all during this time. You feel like you know it all about the world, and you want to share it. Maybe you are a know-it-all. Maybe you are, like, mastered something. Maybe, you know, getting out of Pluto in the 8th house, you've mastered all these occult things, and you now feel like you're so good at this thing, which I'm hoping that's what I get out of Pluto in the 8th house. But yeah, you will just feel very strongly and passionately about this stuff and want to share it and want to change the world with this, right? Now, be careful of being involved with cults, or a cult-like environment can very much be a theme of Pluto in the 9th house. Being the head of one, being involved in one, being under one, or even just the dynamics like that, you know what I mean? You might go back to school, you might have a concentration of education, you might be a teacher, you might have a very profound, strong teacher, you might have a little bit of a frisky relationship with a teacher, you might be a teacher that gets up to frisky things. I don't even know why that came out. Why did that come out? Basically, what's out there becomes your main question, and you want to know and conquer it. And what you thought you knew about the world and life is going to be challenged and tested and transformed and changed. So if you're somebody who was like Pluto in the 8th house, maybe you changed religions, maybe you stuck onto something really strongly, and you're like, yes, I feel this. And you're like, no, I've always felt it. It's never been tested. When you go through Pluto in the 9th house, that shit will be tested. That shit will be proven. And, right, it's like your Salem witch trial with Pluto in the 9th house. But it'll be your own personal trial with, do I agree with this? Does this align with me or not, right? I didn't mean to say it as extreme as that. Just keep in mind that during this transit, you have to keep an open mind. Now let's move into Pluto transiting the 10th house. So you just went through Pluto in the 9th house, okay? You feel very strongly about a certain political thing, about a certain way of thought, about a certain spirituality, about a religion. You might even feel like a master in that, like a preacher or a nun or like a Reiki master or whatever. You know, you might just be like a travel master. You might be a very strong, respected Democrat in the community. You might be a very big 49ers fan. I don't know. Whatever this group is that you feel comfortable, you're now putting it into the public sphere. You're now going to make a business about it, a legacy about it. Now that you changed your mind, now that you have a strong view of things and how you felt about that, will you allow the external changes that need to take place to take place? I'm actually thinking this is a very weird way to think about this. I'm almost thinking like if you go through mastery with something, when you accept your culmination of that, like your stuff gets published in the 10th house and you get the respect, or you pass and you gain the legacy, or you get the Hall of Fame award. Or in the 10th house, it's like you've been researching about this thing for so long and you finally take the step and you become public about it and you create a job about it and you make it your career. You know, you've always felt like you're a Republican, but now you're going to run for office, right? All that sort of stuff. So Pluto in the 10th house, this is going to transform your public image, okay? You are going to go through some major public scrutiny. Do we like you? Do you not? Does authority like you? Do they not? Do you do well in authority or do you not? You are going to find that you have a profound effect on the external environments around you. This might be a very big time that you rise to fame. This is another boundary being broken from the 9th house going to the 10th house, the top peak of your chart. This might be a time that you break a boundary, become more famous than ever before, you gain more acclaim than ever before, or you gain more scrutiny than ever before, which usually they come hand in hand. You gain more public awareness than ever before. You are being seen on a very public platform. Now, that doesn't mean everybody with Pluto in the 10th house is going to be famous, but even if, let's say, you have Pluto transiting your 10th house and you're like, I have all this 3rd house stuff. I mean, I don't see myself really, like, I don't want to be famous. I have a bunch of 3rd house, 4th house stuff, right? But what might happen is, yes, maybe you don't want to be famous or you're not famous, but your family is very well known in your community. You have a lot of 3rd house stuff, right? Maybe even have an 11th house planet. Your family is very well known in the community. They run a family business. With Pluto transiting your 10th house, that family business's reputation, especially because like family business, 4th house, I'm really creating an image here. Your family business's reputation can really be at stake, can be shown in the public light. It might be that time that they pass the legacy on to you. It's the changing of the crowns or whatever it's called. This might be an also time like, do you want to take on that family business? You might change your career. You might feel like my viewpoints, my opinions about life have really changed since Pluto's been in the 9th house. I can't morally do this job anymore. I have to change my career. Or you might get fired. You might get fired from a few jobs. Maybe those jobs aren't serving you. Maybe you went through a lot of public scandals, because again, this is a big theme of public scandals. Be cautious, guys. This is not the time to just fucking send your dick pics around to everybody. This is the time that they will be exposed and you will get heat for it, okay? And now if you want your dick pics everywhere and you want to get heat for it, like, you know what I mean? Then this is the time to do that. This is a great time, you know? But you know what I mean? Like, you're going to be exposed. You're going to be naked and exposed online, right? Just imagine that and kind of act accordingly online because of that. Your online presence is going to matter a lot. This is going to be risky to your reputation, risky to your career. But if you're doing things well, you're dotting your I's and crossing your T's, this is a time that you can really rise to power, rise to acclaim, rise to fame. Like I said, this is a time where you can win your Nobel Peace Prize or get your TED Talk or build your ultimate chopper. I don't know, whatever it is you want to do. How everybody sees you and how you show up in the public sphere will forever change and be changed. You will have issues in the workplace. Family lineage of traumas might come up, right? Family scandals, family problems. Oh, it's not only my problem, I inherited this problem. You're going to have issues with authority. You might have really strong authority, strong control in your life. High expectations, right? You feel like you have a legacy, big shoes to fill when Pluto transits your 10th house. People are going to target you and you don't know why, so you have to be ready. And you might target others and you might not know why. And you just know you have to be ready. Jeez. Also, a big thing that will come up is how your career affects your home life, because your career life will really take over and you're really probably going to wind up putting your career life or your home life in the back burner. So just be cautious that you're not only emphasizing your career life for the loss of your home life and family life, if that's what you care about, okay? Or just be aware that you can get out of this Pluto in the 10th house transit and be like, now that I don't have such a big care about my career, maybe it's not like a big focus for you, you just had Pluto transiting your 10th house for a while, you know, oh wow, I have these 4th house planets, I would love a family, but it's like, you're too late, too little, too late. You neglected your family. You worked all the time. You didn't have one, right? You know, this might be a time where you neglect to get to know yourself a little bit because Pluto is the farthest away from your like root point. So you might forget about who you really are for the sake of the public, how the public image sees you, for the sake of how other people see you. And you might over-identify with your public image and your social standing. So moving on to Pluto in the 11th house. After this transit, the mark that you once wanted to leave on the world is probably no longer either the mark that you want to leave on the world or the mark that you left or the mark that you wish you left. Like, that has changed. That idea has changed, right? You have a different mark you want to leave on this world. And going into the 11th house, Pluto transiting the 11th house, you will try to leave that mark, right? This is really going to transform your social media, transform how people view you on a public sphere, what public opinion is of you. Who you associate with is really going to change. Your friendships are really going to change. You are not going to want superficial relationships anymore. This is mostly going to happen for Aries risings. Aquarius is in its home placement in the 11th house. So no matter if you are a Aries rising or not, if you have Aquarius in the 11th house, it's in its comfortable home placement. And so with this, I think you will also be somebody who will be going through just major themes of Pluto and Aquarius, and it's another good one to look back on, just Pluto and Aquarius themes, because that's what you will be going through on a very wide sphere. You will say AI is going to affect you more than anyone else. Jeff Bezos is an Aries rising. Oh my God, Amazon is going to be going through major changes, and they are going to be the first ones to be going through major changes. Can we all agree it makes sense? He has Capricorn in his 10th house and he has had Pluto going through it. Now he has in his 11th house, he has 11th house planets. Oh my goodness, he's going to be so influential. You're going to be so, like, this is just such a time of being influential. What legacy are you leaving? Okay, you already showed the legacy that you left. Now, what is the public opinion of it? You might go through some major healing groups, art groups, creative groups, offbeat groups. Now, for this, it's going to be AI. I think you guys are going to be very corporate. That's why I'm like, I don't mean to bring so much of Pluto and Aquarius in this, but I think it's going to be so much through the lens of like corporate AI advancements, the first people to try to do things, to propel things. You're really going to make money off of propelling Aquarius-like nature, being the odd one out, the first one to do things, influential things, technology, revolutions, new ways of thought, all that sort of stuff. You will want to be at the forefront of, the forerunner of. This is a time where you can be majorly influential. Now, what will you do with that power? How responsible will you be with that? That's like a serious question that I'm asking you. Again, this is themes of groups, cults, strong group ties, creating a cult-like environment, being the head of a cult-like environment, wanting power and wanting heavy influence, wanting technological influence, being very influenced by technology. Definitely a breakdown of the causes that matter to you. The side that you were once on will probably not be the side that you will be on anymore after this transit. You will feel very differently about how you thought the way of the world was going to go. You will be very surprised. You thought you had it all right. Even me, I thought I had it all right, but you don't. We don't, right? And you will have to deal with that, right? That kind of realization. It's like a rise and a breakdown of that. Like, you think you know where we're going, you think you know where everything's going, and you think you can steer it in the right way. You think you are capable of that responsibility, but are you? And how will you respond to the people that have that responsibility, right? You're going to like darker themes. The subculture that you like will be darker, more mischievous, more underground, right? But with Aquarius, again, keep bringing it back, it's going to be like seedier technological advancement, science marching on blindly. You might feel really alone and isolated during this time. This will be the opposite of what Leo risings are going through with Pluto in the 7th house, of like the needing to connect more with people. I think that Aries risings will feel even more of a disconnect and even more of an isolation from people, from themselves. You're going to feel very distant to yourself. This is a time of connecting with the greater consciousness. This is a time of connecting with like the higher revolutionary thought, okay? You might feel very far from yourself right now. You're going to have really big dreams, really big hopes, really big aspirations, and there is a really big capability for you to fulfill those things. There's a lot of power. It's just what you choose to do with it. It's a lot of intellectual power and influential power. the influencer will be forever changed. Now moving into the last house, we're going into the 12th house. So you just went through this very, very public Pluto and Capricorn in your 11th house transit. You know, for the most part, that's probably where it was, right? Or at least you're just coming off of that, right? So this was very public, right? How do people see me? How am I in the workplace? What's my reputation like? This is a huge reputation thing for you, right? You've been so socially aware, so socially conscious. How do I fit in this group? How do I not fit in this group? What do I feel about this? What do I feel about this? What's my opinion about that? What's my opinion about that? Am I conservative? Am I reformed? Am I liberal? Am I this? Am I that? Am I this? Do I fit into this box? Right? No, that's all gonna stop, okay? You've also been so control focused. I will control mine and everyone else's destiny, right? Pluto in the 11th house. I have complete and total control. There can be a little bit of a godlike feeling with Pluto going through the 11th house. You had a little bit of a godlike head to yourself. That's going to be all taken away, bro. You're about to have Pluto go through your 12th house, okay? You are no longer in control. Jesus, take the wheel. Okay, that is Pluto transiting your 12th house, whether you like it or not. Now, I'm not a Christian. I don't believe in Jesus. I'm not trying to push that. But it's very much that feeling of, you know what I mean? Like, that's kind of what you have to do. You kind of have to take a little bit more of a backseat in your life. And you don't want to hear that. Well, most of the time, I will say, for most people, this is a Pisces rising thing that you're going through this transit. Not always, but for the most part, a lot of Aquarius risings will be here too. But Pisces risings already do have that a little bit in their nature. Just be careful. You might let go of the wheel a little bit too much and be a little bit fearful of where you're getting steered. You are really going to have to deal with your problems. And as a Pisces rising, I think we can all agree you got some. Okay, you got Aquarius in your 12th house. I'm just kidding. You know, you are going to deal with your problems yourself, though. And I think that's what's going to be really hard for you. That's what's going to be isolating. Pisces risings, I think, like to experience emotions in a feeling of unity, a feeling of oneness, of togetherness. And yes, they do go through periods of isolation and they can find comfort in it. I think that for the most part, you know, they write songs for a reason. They write poetry for a reason. They get it out for a reason. Even if it's not seen or shown, they get it out for a reason. But with Pluto going through the 12th house, it might be really hard to get it out. It might feel like all these things are being held within you. You have to deal with your mental health and your problems yourself. You're going to have to rely on yourself. Now, you're going to want to rely and depend on everybody else, but there's going to be a breakdown of that, right? There's going to be a lot of ways that this can go. If you're somebody that wants to hold on to control and wants to just take care of themselves and do everything for you, you're going to lose that. You're going to be forced to Jesus take the wheel it, right? But if you're somebody who, you know, always relies on everybody else and, you know, is like, oh, take care of me, you know, Pluto in the 12th house, Pisces rising, you're going to be forced to, no, that's eventually going to break. You're eventually going to have to take care of yourself, right? The themes of just like, those themes are going to be very relevant, right? And also power, decisions, feeling like somebody or something greater has power over you, but you don't, it's like an elusive figure. Pisces risings might go through a lot of fear with this whole AI stuff. Like with it being in Aquarius, like you might be very scared of the loss of emotion and detachment that will come from this Pluto in Aquarius period. That might be very scary for you. I think you like the feeling that people are emotional and they make emotional decisions, and the thought of like AI advancing things so far and us losing that and us not having these emotional decisions might be a very scary thing for you guys. And you might feel very powerless to this. Like your big, you know, plutonic looming fear might be, you know, technology and the AI non-emotional brain. You're also going to have to deal with, you know, everyone else's problems projected onto you. This might be a time where you feel like you're being the scapegoat a lot. You're being the person that just gets pointed out and saying, oh, this is your fault, blah, 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 blah. When you're like, it's not just my fault, you know, but you're just like the one that takes the blame for it all, takes the brunt of it all. You might really struggle to stand up for yourself, speak up for yourself, speak up for what you want. There might be a lot of hidden enemies because 12th house rules hidden enemies and soulmates, but with Pluto going through the 12th house, it's especially hidden enemies, hidden karmic past, like people that you have to clear up past karma with, whether this lifetime, past lifetimes, just energy you just have to clear off, right? That's going to be major that's going to be a major theme, but you're going to feel victim to it. It's not going to feel like you're going to actively go out and look for this. It's going to feel like it's happening to you. With Pluto in the 12th house, a lot of times it feels like stuff is happening to you. And with Pisces rising at natally, you already do kind of feel that way. So be cautious that you don't get swept up in feeling like that, and you still find a way to take your own personal power. I'm almost like a little bit nervous for Pisces risings because you're already so susceptible to all of these themes just being ruled by the 12th house already. Past family traumas will come out, ancestral past. Now, this will also be a time to develop a lot more psychically. You might really be a healer, a conduit for positive energy. You can really find a lot of solace in isolation and alone time. It might be really healthy for you to seek guidance in yourself internally, even like knowledge and occult knowledge, psychic knowledge. Tune in with yourself. Spend a lot of personal loving time with yourself. Don't dread the alone time you have, and enjoy it and indulge in it. That's the only way that you'll get something out of it. If you don't and you just soak in it, you'll just be miserable, and it'll only teach you this lesson and force you to be alone and isolated more and more. You, I think, kind of have to be your own best friend during this time. You'll really be able to feel other people's emotions. Now, you already can as a Pisces rising. It will also be a major theme of how do you transform negative thoughts into positive thoughts? Because with Pluto in the 12th house, it can feel like that little evil character behind you, that's Pluto, is your subconscious, is your mind. You can get really mean, evil thoughts. You need to transform them into something regenerative, right? Something positive. You have to transform your subconscious, transform your inner mind, right? This can be a selfish time if you let it. If you're like, wow, I'm in this isolation, I'm in this alone time, I'm kind of trying to figure out the constructs of my mind and my mental health and my families and all that sort of stuff. If you see it as an opportunity to discover things about yourself and find out your true self, your hidden self, hidden worlds, hidden realms, just like a time to discover a lot of the hidden mysteries of life, it can be a really beautiful, expansive time if you take advantage of that. It's almost kind of like the thought of like, if you were in prison, would you take advantage of the time to like learn and read, or would you just sit in your misery and just be dreadful to pass the time? Not saying that you're going to prison with Pluto in the 12th house. All of the Pluto transits I can give you a reason why I could see them going to prison, but I'm just saying Pluto in the 12th house takes that one aspect of isolation, like it's like you're in the chute, like it's in your lockup. What would you do with that time? You know, you might not literally be in a lockup, but it can feel like that. How transformative will you allow those experiences to be, or will you succumb to them? Will you let them hinder you, right? This is a big deal. This is not an easy transit. So I wish you guys the best, and you should ask about some advice from the Aquarius risings that just went through it. I'm in the comments. So yeah, anyways, that is Pluto transiting all 12 houses. But I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you got something out of it. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for being here. Again, I sell birth chart readings. I have an astrology TikTok, and I have a personal Instagram. All right, thank you so much for watching. Bye. Should we bring this back for Pluto and Aquarius? Bye.